Good morning, everyone, and welcome to session 3 of our AD Manager Plus workshop series conducted by ManageEngine. Thank you all for registering for today's workshop and then attending it as well. Your participation means a lot to us here. So like I said, this is session 3 of our workshop series. So in the first two sessions, we looked at how we could create users in Active Directory. That is, we looked at the user provisioning process. And then in session 2, we looked at the user management. So once a user is created, we have to manage these users. So that we looked at that in session 2. Now in session 3, we'll be looking at Active Directory reporting. So we'll look at how we can get some vital information of our objects in Active Directory and perform some actions based on these details. So we'll be covering a few sample cases today. So after the session, you'll have some idea of the different reporting functionalities supported by AD Manager Plus and how we can perform on-the-fly management. So we'll run a report and we'll immediately based on the data, we'll perform some management action. Okay, so before getting started, let me introduce myself. I'm Naveen and I'm part of the technical team of AD Manager Plus here at AD Solutions. Okay, so let's take a look at what we'll be covering in today's session. So these are the tasks for today. First, we'll be looking at how we can identify users with unnecessary logon permissions on domain controllers and file servers. So if a regular user needs access to a file server, so to give this user access, what we would do is we would add this user to a security group. It might be an administrator security group. So then once the user has finished working on the file server, we'll remove that user from the group. So this is fine as long as we remember to remove the user. Say we forget to remove the user, then this will cause a big security issue for us. So we'll be looking at how we can see which users are which users are part of a certain group and how we can manage the logon permissions for them. So say a user is part of the admin group and they have access to a certain file server. We'll look at how we can revoke this access. And then we'll be looking at how we can force organization-wide user password resets. So if our organization comes under a brute force attack, then we immediately want to reset all the users' passwords. So that we want to reset the users' passwords. So we'll be looking at how we can perform a bulk password reset for our users. Then we'll also look at how we can manage and report on our organization's custom attributes. So we'll look at how we can add a custom attribute to AD Manager Plus and how we can fetch data of these attributes from AD. Then we'll look at how we can find and remove excess permissions granted to users. Okay, so what I mean here is if a user has access to certain shares on a file server, then we'll look at what permissions this user has, and based on that, we'll see how we can modify the Ntfs permissions for that user, for that share folder. And then we'll look at how we can view the nested group memberships for users. So if we log on to the AD Active Directory users and computers and look at the member of attribute for a particular user, it will only show us the groups to which the user is an immediate member. It will not show nested groups. What I mean is, if the user is, say, a member of group 1 and group 1 is a member of group 2, the AD users and computers will only show the user as member of group 1. So we'll see how we can view the nested group memberships with the help of AD Manager Plus. And based on this, we can remove users from certain groups and manage our Active Directory environment. And then finally, we'll be looking at how we can identify and restrict users who have access to important business information. So again, this will be related to Ntfs permissions management. Okay, so now let me log on to my local installation of AD Manager Plus. So I have a local test installation set up for performing the tasks. If you have a test installation, you can make use of that and perform the tasks as I perform them here. So, but if you do not have a test installation, I'll be sharing the link for our online demo setup. So if you look at the chat box, I have sent the demo site link. So you can go to the demo site and perform the and look at the reports in that. Okay, so let me just get started. I'll first log on to AD Manager Plus. Okay, so in the first two sessions, we looked at the AD management tab. So like I said, we looked at the user creation process, and then we've looked at the user modification process as well. Okay, so today we'll be looking at the AD reports. So in AD reports, we'll be looking at, so these are the different reports that we have in AD Manager Plus. So they're grouped as based on the object. So we have user reports, password reports, etc. So each of these subtabs has multiple reports under it. So we have exchange reports, contact reports. So let's go through these reports one by one. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to see which all users are not a part of the domain admins group. So if a user is not a part of the domain admins group, I want to restrict the logon access to certain workstations. So if the user is not a part of the domain admins group, sorry, I'm going to generate a report that will give me a list of all the users not in the domain admins group and remove them from the file servers. Okay, so for this, we have under group reports, we have a report called users not in groups. So I click on users not in groups. Now here, this report will give me details of users who are not a part of the specified group. So in the select group option, I can click on the plus icon and I get a pop-up of all the groups configured in Active Directory. So I'm going to search for my domain admins group and select that. Okay, now I just click OK. So now I hit generate and it's going to give me a list of all the users who are not a member of the domain admins group. Okay, so now the report has generated and you'll see that so I just have to, after this, I just have to make a selection. So say I don't want these users to have access to certain workstations. So if I can do that by, first I select the users and then at the top, there's something called more actions. So once I generate a report, I can perform the management actions straight from the report. I don't have to go to another management action and search for these users individually. I can do it right from the report. Okay, so I just select the users and click on more actions. So here I have a list of all the actions that are supported. What I want to do is restrict access to certain workstations. So for that, I click on the user workstations action. So I click on user workstations and hit go. So now under this, I have certain options. So I can either allow these users access to all computers, or I can restrict these to only some computers. So I can either add them to some workstations here, or if I want to remove them from certain workstations, I'd select that option and enter those values here. So I choose remove computers from users. Now I just have to choose them. So this computer here is a domain controller. I don't want these users to have access to the domain controllers. So I select that domain controller and click OK. So now I've made my selection. All I have to do now is click apply. So if I click apply, the domain controller will be removed from the configured workstations. Okay, so once this action is completed, if this user tries to log on to my domain controller with his credentials, he will not be given access. Okay, so that is how we can manage the logon to for certain users. Now there are different ways in which this can be done. If you want to do this based on group memberships, then you can generate a report to see like which users are part of the group, or in our case we said not in groups. So there are different ways in which this can be done. This is just one example. There are definitely many more ways in which this can be done. Okay, so now let's go on to the next topic. So next we'll be looking at how we can perform a password reset in bulk. So I'm not going to be modifying the passwords of all my users. I just want to generate a report of the users present in a particular organizational unit and reset the password for all of those users. So for this, I go to user reports. So I click on user reports, and here I go to all user reports. Now, all user reports, as you will know, it just generates a list of all the users present in Active Directory. Now, I want to filter this result to only show users present in a particular OU. So for this, I have the domain selection component here. So whichever domain I want to generate the report for, I just check that domain here, and then I can select the OUs as well. So I click on the Add OUs link. So if I click on this and select the appropriate OU, it will just generate the report for the users present in that OU. So I've made the selection, I just hit generate. So these three users are present in the IT admins USA OU, and now I can perform my actions. I just make the appropriate selections and then go to choose the appropriate management action. So by default, we have some actions here. We can either delete the user or disable them or move the users. So if you want to perform some other action, we select on the more actions option and choose the action. So I want to reset the passwords for these users. So I select that option and hit go. Okay, so now I just have to provide the password here. So I type out a password for these users. Now I want the users to change the passwords the next time they log into the next time they log in with their user account. So for this, I choose the option user must change password at next logon. So I have two options. I can either say yes or no. So I want them to change the thing at next logon. So I just select that option here. Now I hit apply. If I hit apply, then the passwords will be reset, and the next time these users log on, they will be forced to change their passwords. Okay, so this is how we can reset passwords in bulk for users. We just generate a report for the users we require, and then select the appropriate users, and then click choose the action and hit apply. Okay, so next we'll be looking at another set of tasks that can be done. So what I'll be doing is I'll be generating a report for the inactive users. If the users have been inactive in Active Directory for more than a certain number of days, then I want to remove these users from all the groups that they are present in, or I might even want to delete them. So for this, I have the inactive users report here. So under user reports, I have a report called inactive users. So I click on inactive users. Now I just have to specify a time period. So whether they have been inactive for last 30 days, 7 days, or if I want to select my own custom date, I can choose that here. So I make the selection, and I have two other options as well. I can either exclude never logged on users, or I can exclude disabled users. So if I select these, then the report result will be filtered accordingly. So after doing all this, I can hit generate. So now inactive users report is a multi-DC report. What that means is if multiple domain controllers are configured in AD Manager Plus, then the product will communicate with all the domain controllers and give me the latest value for the last logon time. So say the if we do so we won't know which domain controller was used for the last authentication for logging into AD. So for this, we go to all the domain controllers and give the correct value. Sorry, and get the correct value. Okay. So again, now I have my list of inactive users. So again, I just select them and choose the appropriate action. So I'm going to disable the users. So I just click on disable. So I confirm that I want to disable the user and click OK. Okay, so now the user has been successfully disabled. Now they will not be able to log on to Active Directory. Okay, now we've seen the three basic management actions. We saw how we could restrict the logon access to certain users. We saw how we could generate a report for all the users in a particular OU and then reset the password. And we also generated a report to look at the inactive users. So we saw which users were inactive for the past 30 days, and based on that result, we disabled those users. Now let's take a look at how we can check for nested group memberships. So like I explained at the beginning, what we're looking at is if a user is a member of a certain group and that group is also a member of other groups, how can we get a detailed list of this nested group membership? Okay, so before I generate the report, I have a test AD account. I'll just show you what the current member of attribute is present in AD. So I search for my user and click modify. Now the member of attribute that is displayed here is taken directly from Active Directory. So looking at this, we will know what is currently configured. Okay, so it looks like it's taking a lot of time. So now while that loads, let's take a look at the report that we'll be working on. So we go to AD reports, and under user reports, there's a subheading called nested reports. So what nested report? So there are two here: users in groups or groups for users. So what we are interested in here is to view the groups for the users. So you want to see all the groups that the user is directly or indirectly a member of. Okay, so I click on groups for users and I select my user from the list. So I click on the plus icon there and choose my user. So I select my user and hit OK. And now I hit generate. So now you can see that the report is generating and the user is currently a member of three groups here. So it's a member of the test group, the domain admins group, the administrators group, and the denied RODC password replication group. So the user is actually only a member of the test group here. The user is not a direct member of the administrators or the domain admins or the denied RODC password replication group. The only reason it is being shown as a member of here is that the test group is a member of all of these groups. So in that, so this report tells me which all groups this user is part of. So if this user were say an admin user, then it's fine. The user being a member of the domain admins group is not a problem at all. But if it is a regular user, then we would immediately want to revoke the group membership for this user. So actually, if you look at the report, we see that the test group is a member of the domain admins, and the domain admins is a member of the administrator and the denied RODC password replication group. So it has actually shown me 3 levels of nesting. Also, if we are to generate this report for multiple users, then we can also filter the result to show. So initially, it will show me all the data. I can also filter it from here. Okay, so now I have the group from which I want to remove the user from. All I have to do is go to AD management, modify the group attributes. and remove this user from this group. Or if I want to remove the domain admins from the test group, that's probably what I'd want to do. I would want to remove the domain admins group from the test group, because that is what's causing all my problems here. Okay, so now let's take a look at how we can manage and report our custom attributes in Active Directory. So if you generate a report, so let me go back to the all users report. Uh, for now, only these columns are listed in the report. So I can see the display name, full name, distinguished name, etc. If I want to view some other details of this user, then for that I can choose the add or remove columns here. So if I select add or remove columns, now I have a list of all the attributes that can be viewed for this user. So all of these attributes can be added to the report, and they will be visible in the report. So I click OK. Now you can see that all of these attributes are visible to me. But say you have an attribute for which you want to get data, but that is not present in this list. So if the attribute that you require is not present in this available attributes list, then you can always add a custom attribute to the product. And once this attribute is added, you can generate reports for them, as well as manage the attributes in Active Directory with the help of AD Manager Plus. So let's first see how we can configure a custom attribute in ADMP. So for this, I go to the admin tab. So at the top, there's the admin tab. So I select that. Now from the submenus, I click on LDAP attributes. So the LDAP attributes menu here will let me create custom attributes in AD Manager Plus. So I'm not creating any attributes in Active Directory. It is only locally I am telling AD Manager Plus that this custom attribute is present in my Active Directory environment, and I want to perform management actions and generate reports for these attributes. So all the custom attributes that you have configured will be listed here. So I've already configured one, extension attribute 1. So let's see how we can add another attribute to ADMP. So for that, I click on add attribute. Now I just have to provide a display name for my attribute. So display name can be anything. This will be the column header when I generate the report, or in the management tasks, the field name will be the display name. So this is only for us, the users, to view the attribute. This is not taken from Active Directory. Now the LDAP name is the important one here. This should be the same as the LDAP name of the custom attribute in Active Directory. So in Active Directory, if I have a custom attribute called extension attribute 2, then the LDAP name has to be the same. If I give some other name here and the attribute does not exist in AD, then the product will not be able to get the data for that attribute, and it will always be empty. Now next I have to choose a data type. So I have multiple data types I can choose from. So for my need, I just want it's going to be a Unicode string. So just a regular string, so I choose that. So you can choose whatever data type is configured in Active Directory. You choose the same data type here. Okay, so now I have to choose which reports I want to generate. I mean which reports I want this attribute to be visible in. So I can choose either user reports, group reports, computer contacts, or exchange reports. So whichever reports I select from here, the attribute will be visible only in those reports. So I'm going to choose user and group reports for now. And okay, next I have to choose the associated management tasks. Again, we have multiple management tasks. So whichever ones you wish the custom attribute to be visible in, just choose those tasks from here. So if you want it to be in user creation and modification and nothing else, just choose those and I hit add. I do that and I click on add. So now the custom attribute has been added to ADMP. Let's see how we can generate reports for these attributes. So for this, I go back to AD reports. Okay, so I'm going to take my all users report again. So in all user report, previously the extension attribute 2 was not available in the add or remove columns option. So now let's open it and see. Okay, so now the custom attribute that was added is visible here. So I just choose that and move it to the right. So now it is visible, it will be visible in the report. I want it to be higher up, so I just move it further up in the list. Okay, now I click OK. So the order that is seen here, the columns will all in the report will be in the same order. So if display name is first here, then the report also, the display name will be the first column. So if you want to rearrange the columns, you can do that from here. Just choose the appropriate attribute and either click on up or down. So that just moves the attribute further down or moves it up in the report. So I click OK. So now it's been added. Since no report has been generated, now to get values for this attribute, I have to generate the report again. So this time I'm going to run the report for all my OUs. So now I'll get a list of all the users in Active Directory, and I'll see what the values for my custom attributes are. Okay, so let's look at the value for extension attribute 1. Okay, so these users have this attribute configured in AD, so they have a value. So this is the value for my particular user. So the user test user has this as the value for the custom attribute. Now, like I said, you can add any number of custom attributes to the product. You just specify the display name, the LDAP name, and choose the reports in which you wish to view the attribute, as well as the management tasks. So once all this is done, we can generate the report and view the values. Okay, so that was for generating reports. There are a large number of reports in AD Manager Plus. So and they're all categorized based on objects. So we have all our AD related reports here and Office 365 as well as G Suite reports. So if you want to get some data from Office 365 or G Suite, we have options for that as well. And then finally, we also have a ability to generate custom reports. So if I choose custom report, now these are the custom reports that have already been configured in AD Manager Plus. So let's see how we can create a new report. So for that, I just click on the new custom report link here. Okay, so let's go through this step by step. So I have to first provide a report name. So I give a report name and an optional description. Okay, then I have to give what category will the report is the report, whether it's a user report, group report, computer report, or contact report. So I can choose that here. And then I have to choose the domains as well as the OUs in which I want to generate this report. And then, so if you have multiple domains, we can choose those domains from here and filter the report based on OUs. And then the most important thing is the condition. So this condition specifies what users will be taken from Active Directory. So this current condition was telling me that the report should fetch all the users from the domain specified from this domain. Now, if you want to filter the report further, you can always do that. So you just provide the value here. So this is the LDAP name and this is the corresponding filter. And then we also have some other filters here. So we click add, and then we can filter based on the individual attributes as well. So if you want to generate a report in which if the description is a certain value, that can be done. And we can add multiple filters as well. And then finally, we just hit save. Okay, so I click save. So now my custom report has been saved and I can view it and generate the report. So the custom reports are you can create as many reports as you require. So if the reports that we provide in the product by default are not enough, or you want your own report, you can always try creating a custom report. So the custom reports can be configured, and you can generate them as well. Okay. Now we saw for in reports, we saw how we could filter the reports based on Active Directory users. I'm sorry, how we could filter the report based on the Active Directory OUs. And we also saw how we could add different columns to the report. And if there's some column that is not present in ADMP by default, we saw how we could add that to the report as well. So I'll go back to my all users report. So once the report is generated, I can also export the report. So if I export the report to a file, and I can export the report to a certain file. So at the top, there's an export as option. So I have these file formats below. So I can choose the appropriate file format. And if I click it, the report will get exported. So I click on PDF. So now the report is getting exported. All the data will be put into a PDF file and it will automatically download. And after this, I will be able to view the report. Now, a really powerful feature of AD Manager Plus is we can export the report in Csvde format. What this means is, so CSV format is a column separated values. So we looked at CSV files before. Uh, so in user management and user creation, we use CSV files for performing the actions. So if I want to reset the password for certain users, I just have to import my CSV file with the mandatory attribute and perform the actions. So for this, the header of my CSV file must have the attributes in LDAP format. So for doing this, all I have to do is I can generate an all user report. Then I just choose the appropriate columns. And once this is done, I go to export as and click on Csvde. So now my report will be exported in Csvde format. And now this very CSV file can be used in my management actions as well. I don't have to manually go and enter or fill in the CSV value. I mean the values in the CSV file. I can just generate a report from here, export it in CSVDE format, and then directly use this CSV file in the other AD management tasks. Which the only condition is a unique attribute must be present in the CSV file. So yesterday we were looking at the SAM account name. So make sure you include the SAM account name and export the file. Then the same CSV file can be used in the other management tasks in AD Manager Plus. Okay, so finally let's look at another important topic another important task that can be performed with AD Manager Plus. So what I'm going to see now is I want to generate a report to see the user accounts that have permissions to certain shared folders. So if we have a shared folder that contains some sensitive information, then we don't want regular user accounts to have access to this. So the only way that you could actually do this is go to the shared folder, go to the properties and check which all users have access to that. So in AD Manager Plus, we can generate a report for this. We can just choose the shared folder, and then based on the result, we can remove certain users. Limit the permissions for these users. So for this, I go to AD Reports. Okay, now under AD Reports, I have the Ntfs Reports. So I click on Ntfs Reports. Now what I want to see is, I want to see which users have access permissions on a certain folder. So I go to the Permissions for Folders report. So I click on Permissions for Folder. Now I just have to follow these steps. The first is to select a domain. So I have already selected that. And then I have to choose the folder. So here I have a list of all the workstations that are present in my domain. I just choose the appropriate workstation. And then after choosing the workstation, I will get a list of all the folders that are present. So I just choose the folder as well. Now once I do this, I click OK. And then I also have an option to check for folder permission up to a certain level. So I can either generate it up to for the parent folder level or 5 subfolders. And so these are the default options. And if you want, you can also set your own custom level. So for now, I'm just going to set the parent folder level. And now I click generate. So now I will get a list of all the accounts in Active Directory that have permissions upon this folder. So all of these users have certain permissions on the folder. So if I want to look in more details, I click on Advanced. And now I can see that the following permissions are, this user has the following permissions. Okay, so my requirement was I want to generate this report and see if any users have incorrectly been given access to this report. So say one of these users should not be given access to this report. So what I have to do is I want to remove the permissions for the user Andy1. So let's see how this can be done. So for this, I go to AD management. So I click on AD management. And on the left, we have something called file server management. So I click on file server management. So I have multiple options. I can modify the NTFS permissions, I can remove them, or I can modify the shared permissions and as well as remove the shared permissions. So what I wanted to do is I want to remove the access of Andy1 from the from the folder. So I click on remove NTFS permissions. So the first thing is to select the folder. So I go to my server and then choose my folder. Now I have to choose the permissions. So I want to remove it for Andy1. So I click OK. Now all the permissions that are configured for, so I just have to choose the permissions which I want to remove for this user. So if I want to remove full control, I can click that. Or if I want to go remove uh, only certain permissions, then I can do that as well. So if I want to remove only the list folder contents option, then I click that and click done. Then I can also choose whether, up to what level does this apply, whether it applies to this folder and subfolders and file, or any of the options from here. Okay, and we also have to see whether the user whether he currently has an allow or a deny permission. So whatever is currently configured, that should be selected from here. Okay, then at the bottom, we have 3 additional checkboxes. The first one is include inheritable permissions from this object's parent. So if the folder is inside another folder, then whether this option decides whether the parent folder's permissions will apply here. Now the second option is remove all existing permissions and apply only the above permission. So if I select this, any existing permissions present on this folder will be removed, and only what I specify here will be kept. And then I can also replace all existing inheritable permissions from this object. So I just choose the appropriate values and click remove. So once I click on remove, the permissions will be removed for this user. Okay, so once it is done, it will give me the status. So it looks like some permissions were not removed. So if you go to more info, it will give you a more detailed overview of what errors occurred, and you can go ahead and troubleshoot it from there. Okay, so that was a basic overview of the reporting functionality present in AD Manager Plus. Now this is we just looked at how we can manually generate the reports. So we go to a particular report, from the list of reports we select the report and manually choose the OUs we want to generate it for and click generate. Now let's see how we can schedule these reports. So instead of logging into the product every time we require information and generating a report and then maybe exporting it, we can schedule the reports. So if we schedule the reports, then we can set a time period. So in that period, the report will be run and it will be exported. And if we require, we can also have the report sent to us via email. So let's see how this can be done. So if we once we go to the AD reports tab, and on the right side, we have the schedule reports option. So I click on schedule reports. Now any schedule reports that are already configured in the product will be visible here. So right now I don't have any schedule reports configured. So let's create a new schedule report. Okay, so the first step is to give a name for my schedule report. Okay, now after this, I have to select my domain and the OUs for this report. So this will tell the product which domains I want to fetch data from, as well as which OUs I want to restrict the result to. And then I choose the appropriate reports. So in a single schedule, we can configure multiple reports. So if you want the different reports like the all users report, the all groups report, etc., to all be sent to be all to be generated at a particular time and sent to you via email, you just add all of them to this particular schedule report. So I want to add the all users report. So once I select it, it gets added to the selected reports tab. Now, under password reports, we have some important reports. So we can see the recent logon failures and users who cannot change password. So what I want to generate here is the soon to expire user passwords. So I can tell the product, please show me the users whose passwords are going to expire in a certain number of days. So the product will generate a report for this. And send this to us via email. So I just select that. Now I have to enter the number of days. So whether the password is going to expire in the next 7 days or any custom period. So I'll give 10 days here and click OK. So like this, we can add any of the reports from the tab here and add them to the selected reports side. Now let's look at some other customizations that can be done. So once the report has been added, there's an option to customize the columns. So I click on customize columns. So here again, like before, I have the options to choose the columns I want to display. So if I want a certain column to be present in the report, they will be listed in the selected column side. Now if I want to remove one, I just select that and remove it here like this. And I can also filter the report. So if I add a filter here, I just choose a field. So if I want to generate the report for users whose first name contains a certain value, so first name contains, say, John. Now the report will run, and only the users whose first name contains John will be present in my report. So like this, I can add multiple filters and refine my report further, and then just click OK. Okay, so now we've selected the domain and the reports we want to configure. Now the next step is to choose the schedule duration. So there are multiple options. I can schedule it hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly. Or if I want to have a custom time period, I can choose that here as well. So I want this report to be generated daily at a certain time. So say 9 a.m. So I want the report to be run every day at 9 a.m. So I choose that here. Now I have to select the format for exporting the report. So I can choose any of the formats here. I'm going to generate this report in PDF format. And finally, we just specify an email address to which the report should be sent. So whatever email address you give here, the scheduled report will be sent to that address. So if you don't give any email address here, the report will not be emailed. So I click on Save. Okay, so now the scheduled report has been created. Let me look at the scheduled report. So I click on Schedule List. So you can see that the new report has been created. It's called Scheduled Reports, and for which domain as well as the duration. Now, if I want to run this report immediately, I can just click on the Run Now option. What this does is, instead of it will generate the report immediately and send the report to my email. So if you do not want, if you require the report to be sent immediately, We just have to choose the Run Now option and it will be done. Okay, so that concludes all the reports that we are going to look at in today's session. Like, as you can see, there are lots of reports that we provide. So the best thing is to actually go through all the reports and see which reports you actually would require, and then generate them and see the data that is provided. So individual reports will have their own specific filters. Like we saw the inactive users report, we could filter the duration in which the users were inactive. Similarly, the other reports will also have their own filters. So we didn't really look at the Exchange reports. So in Exchange, if we have Exchange configured, then we can generate reports based on Exchange as well. So, and as you can see, there are other reports as well. Okay, so let me just give a quick overview of what we saw today's session. So we started off by saying we generate a report to see which users are not a part of the domain admins group, and based on this result, we modify the logon to attributes for these users. So we removed certain workstations from which the user could log on to. And then we saw how we could perform a password reset for all the users that are present in a particular OU. So we just generated the all users report and in a particular OU and went with the reset password option. And okay, yeah, so in that way, the user's passwords will be reset. And then we looked at the inactive users report. So we were able to generate the inactive users report for a certain duration. So we saw which all users were inactive for the last 30 days. And based on this, we could perform some actions. So in our test case, we just we disabled the users. So there are obviously many other actions. You can just go to the more actions option and select the appropriate action. So we can also perform exchange tasks from here. So whichever is required to perform that directly from the report. Then we looked at how we could configure custom attributes in AD Manager Plus. We saw how we could create a new custom attribute in the product and then generate the report to show me the values present in those attributes. Then we looked at how we could verify the nested permissions for users. So what we saw is if a user is not directly a member of a certain group, but the user might have some nested group memberships. So if the user is a member of group 1 and group 1 is a member of the domain admins group, then the user will indirectly have admin privileges. So we saw how we could generate a report for this and modify the user's member of accordingly. And then finally, we looked at basic Ntfs permission management. So we generated a report to show us the users who have access to a certain file server, a share on a server. And based on this information, we saw how we could remove the permissions for this user. And then finally, we looked at how we could schedule reports. So instead of logging into the product every time and generating a report, we saw how we could schedule the report. So that we set a time period and the report is generated at that time. And we can also get a notification via email. Okay, so once again, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's workshop session. After the session, we'll be sending out feedback forms to all of you. So please do fill out these forms and send them back to us. Your feedback is much appreciated, and we'll definitely try and incorporate all your suggestions in our upcoming workshops. So the next session will be on the 17th of April, again at the same time, that is 11 a.m. EDT. So in the next session, we'll be looking at how we can delegate certain tasks to our technicians. So if we have help desk technicians who we do not want to give certain privileges, we'll see how we can restrict the access in AD Manager Plus. So if we want to give permissions only to do certain actions, we'll see how that can be done. So thank you all again for today. I'll be here answering your questions. So if you have any questions, please ask them in the chat box, and I will answer them as well as I can. And if I do not answer your questions, don't worry. I will definitely respond to you via email and answer your questions. So thank you all again, and you have a great day.